Monmouth City Council and ask our city recorder, Phyllis Bowman, for the roll call, please.
Counselor Beltz?
Here.
Counselor Carey?
Here.
Counselor Lopez is excused. Counselor McKeel?
Here.
Counselor Oberst?
Here.
Counselor Salinas Oliveros is absent. And Mayor Coots.
I am present, and I will lead us in the flag salute if everyone would join us and stand this evening. That brings us to the consent calendar. We have had several meetings. We have meetings from July 16th, July 24th, and July 30th to look at because we did not meet on August 6th. Do we have any additions or corrections to those minutes?
I would like to move that we approve the consent calendar.
A second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Councillor McKeel, for the motion and Councillor Oberst for the second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you. This brings us to public comments, and we have two public comment sections this evening. This is for items not currently on the agenda, but I don't have anyone who's handed in a form for that. And Phyllis, have we received any submitted public comment for items not on the agenda?
We have not, Mayor Coots.
Great, thank you. That brings us right to our business agenda. And our first item tonight is our opportunity to meet with our senior advisory board. And it appears we have our president with us this evening, as well as the director of the Monmouth Senior and Community Center, Barbara Cronin. And so if you come on up and we'll get you set up on the microphone there.
Well, for those who don't know me, my name is Pat Olson. I am chairman of the Senior Advisory Board. And on behalf of the Senior Advisory Board, we bring our greetings to you. This has been another good year of growth. We have increased our membership to around 500 registered members and around 6,600 sign-ins. That's the electronic sign-in. Every time somebody comes in, they take a little plastic card and sign in with it on the electric sign-in. We are offering additional classes such as a needlework class, a sewing class, an American Sign Language class, and jewelry making, a community dance class, and more. It still appears that we continue to draw membership from a large surrounding area of the valley like we used to do. As the Senior Advisory Board looks to the future, we are looking forward to getting a new bus. The current van is getting rust and peeling paint on top of the current van and is not user-friendly to those who need mobility devices. Furthermore, the advisory board is keeping watch and discussing issues around safety policies for the building, age-friendly initiatives, and issues around the unhoused and healthcare issues for senior citizens. This includes updating a couple committees to conform to our vision, such as promotion and outreach. The center is also a warming and cooling spot for those in need of such a place. This has been a short summary of our outreach efforts to the community and senior members of Monmouth and Independence. Lastly, we have 3 vacancies and really would appreciate the council's help with recruiting interested parties. Are there any questions? Well, it sounds like there aren't any. Hopefully, I gave you
Counselor
all
Carey
the
has,
information.
Counselor Carey has a question or comment for you. Mr. Olson?
First of all, comment, Pat, and that's thank you for your long and enduring work on this. You've been doing this for a long time and you've done a nice job of it. You asked us about assistance with recruiting. How would we do that in your mind?
Well, it's my understanding that the council is, at least I heard it through the grapevine, that the council is responsible for recruiting interested parties and to fill those vacancies. So there would be advertising in the newsletter that comes out in our electrical bills. There would be other ways of doing it. How do you recruit for council members? Perhaps the same way.
Yeah, I think one of the things we try to do is make available or make vacancies, known, and then recruit people when we can. I thought you might have had some silver bullet that would fix the whole thing, but
Yeah.
I think that we will we'll all take that under advice. I do have a question for you, and I know you started this. Your group started this a couple of years ago, in terms of reaching out for a more diverse population, in the senior center, particularly along, something reflecting our community. I'm just wondering how you're doing on that.
Would you repeat that question? I didn't quite hear you.
Well,
I think I can answer that.
okay, yeah, sorry, Pat, I was a little rambling there.
Okay.
Barb? Yeah.
So with the majority of our providers of programs and classes in the community center being volunteers, it's sort of an organically happening slate of programs. So as we've done outreach to different events, trying to do things that are bilingual is really important when we're putting information out to folks. The problem is if you translate a flyer and you invite people to come into a program that's not then bilingual, folks are going to come once, not come back, right? So finding ways to let folks outside of our normal groups know that it's a community center space that anybody can bring a club or a gathering or a program into is kind of the way we go about doing that. And that's ebbed and flowed a little bit over the years, but there's lots of opportunity still there. It's very true.
Well, your efforts are appreciated, and if we could help on that, we'd be glad to help you with that as well.
Sure.
So, thank you. Thanks, Pat.
And I think some of the vacancies are for people who do not live here, right? I believe
Correct. And that
at
was
least
a
2 of them.
council decision that was made a couple years ago, was amending the makeup of our board to allow for not all Monmouth residents and only, I think, one person was allowed to live outside of the city of Monmouth. And we've amended that now to where the board president and the vice chair, the chair and vice chair need to be Monmouth residents, but we allow, I think it's up to three or four. I can find that out and let you know for sure. But the ordinance changed to allow for more seats outside because we serve roughly 60% of our regular users are from Monmouth and the rest are from outside the city limits.
And I think two of your vacancies were non-residents, is that correct?
Mhm.
So we do have openings for non-Monmouth residents
Absolutely.
on the Senior Advisory Board, so we
Yes.
can recruit others who have either particular expertise or interest,
Mhm.
but may not live in the city.
Yeah.
All right, I think that's it. Thank you again for the work you do. Thank you, Pat, for running that board, and we appreciate the annual visit.
Well, thank you. By the way, this is my 11th report. It's been a long run. Thank you very much.
All right, and with that, our next item of business is considering adoption of the public safety fee that we've been discussing basically since our April-May budget committee sessions. And at this time, what we'd like to do is receive our staff report. We will then have council questions of staff, and then we will take public comment on this before we go into our deliberations. So looks like we have Finance Director Susie Marston, Police Chief Isaiah Haynes, ready to answer our questions, remind us of how we got here, and we appreciate all this work, continued work on this issue. So thank you.
Mayor, I'm going to start off. So during the budget preparation for FY 24-25, substantial cuts were needed to balance the general fund budget, and the police department is 39% of the general fund budget. Police department and finance staff started looking for cost savings, as well as trying to seek solutions to provide additional funding to maintain acceptable service levels. The city council held a work session on July 2nd to discuss establishing a public safety fee, and at that time, staff presented using the electrical utility service rate structure methodology. This seemed to be the best way for the city to be able to allocate the cost across and do a door-to-door approach, and so and allocate it equitably. In regards to public outreach, on July 15th, the city hosted a town hall where Chief Haynes and Finance Director Marston gave a presentation to citizens. Other outreach, I'd like to go over that just to remind everyone. 1,246 people read the e-newsletter. And there's more data on page 16 of your packet. Approximately 3,500 people who received the utility bill received the newsletter. 186 views of our work session, which is a very high number on YouTube. 61 views of our town hall with 50 more in attendance. 59 views on our 7/16 council meeting. The town hall survey, which yielded 5 results. The mayor's notes were featured in the Polk IO, and the mayor's notes were also highlighted in the Hoffman Estate Community Newsletter. The survey was offered at Music in the Park and National Night Out as well. And a podcast with the chief and Susie was also completed, where 30 downloads happened, and it was also played on KMUZ. And then communication staff has received 12 emails with 3 in favor, 1 neutral, and wanted more information, and 8 emails against. The majority of the 8 against mentioned fixed income as a factor, with one of the individuals citing systemic nationwide police brutality as a reason she was against the fee. On your dais this evening, we printed out the responses that we received, so you would have access to look at that information as well. One of the main questions that we received had to do with fixed incomes and having to pay this fee and how it was going to affect people. And so staff wanted to suggest possibly doing an assistance surcharge of 40 cents on top of the $9.85 public safety fee. This would be used to assist low and fixed income families. This funding would equate to about $1,700 a month, and it would be transferred. Right now, we use Polk County FCO to do our current utility through the electrical service. We have an assistance program there, so they already
receive funding and then allocate that out. So they have the system set up. So it's something we could then transfer these funds to them. And we had initial talks with them to see if they'd be willing to do it, and they were, but we don't have anything set up yet. And then also to mitigate any issues with this, if we were to do the public safety fee and have this on shut-off days for the first several months, have someone here from that agency, also have a bilingual assistance as well that can be here. So folks coming in, if they've been impacted by the fee, we can get them assistance right away. From all of this outreach, there were some questions that were presented. And so now Chief Haynes and Susie are going to go ahead and respond to those.
Good evening. I'm going to touch on, I think a lot of the main questions that, at least that I heard, were what are we getting for the public safety fee if we were to do that? And we would be restoring the 15th police officer that we had last year. We would be restoring the community service officer to full-time from, they were reduced to 0.8. And we would be asking to add a 16th officer. And I think that's probably actually the biggest question they got, is why add a 16th officer? And as I was looking through a staff report, I actually thought the best way to really explain this would be to talk about today. Today I have several people that are on vacation. I have 2 that are sick. I have 1 that's on FMLA, and I have another supervisor who's at the Supervisor Leadership Academy at DPSST. And these are things that, although today is not always typical, these are things that happen in any organization, and they do frequently throughout the year. And it's our responsibility. We shuffle people around. And so today we had our detective sergeant that was covering the road with the help of myself and another patrol sergeant. So we shuffle and we make things work. But as we look to do this, we're trying to be responsible. We're trying to make sure that we have supervisors on the road, that we have enough patrol staff on the road, and we're not just one, or we're not always having to take from one operation for another to make it work. So we're looking to just really keep pace with the growth of our city, the calls for service that we have, and to do the best we can. We've also seen some of the levels of service. I'll say we talked about it before at the town hall meeting, but some of the things that we do are self-directed time, and we talk about traffic enforcement. It is important to do. It's an education piece. It's not just trying to, write tickets and gain revenue. But those are things that we've seen over the years, that as our calls for service have gone up, our ability to be responsive really to the public and to do the things, traffic enforcement has gone down. So we think that adding that 16th officer is going to help us with many different things there, but it would be to enhance our patrol staff. Our patrol staff. And I guess I would highlight really just our usable officers. That's a term that we've used, or serviceable officers, whatever you want to call it. But even though we've had 15 last year and then 14 this year, our average over the last 10 years has been 11.95 usable officers. And that would be based on the reasons that I just kind of outlined today, is that we always have people that are in, again, on some kind of protected leave, or they could be on administrative leave. They could be at training, and there's just a variety of things that happens. And so on average, we have 11.95 that are usable to us at any given time. And so I guess that would be the explanation for that. And I'll pass it over here to Susie.
Okay, on the financial side of things, part of this discussion, there was a question raised about an alternative to helping the general fund. And one of those was, well, what if we raise the frozen tax base in the urban renewal district? So you can see on page 18 of your packet, I actually ran a couple of different scenarios, but a general rule of thumb is your TIP money is really what covers the debt service in the urban renewal district, in addition to other administrative costs that can't be funded with debt service. So a good rule of thumb is to save at least half of that TIP revenue by the end of the year, to make sure you've got something in the coffer, so to speak, to cover debt service for the next year, just in the event something comes up. So by doing that, in order to save 50% of the TIF revenue, I was able to figure out that we could increase the tax base by almost $24 million. But by doing this, the difference between the frozen tax base and the total assessed value is what gets taxed. And so that difference is smaller with a higher frozen tax base. So you've got less tax going into the urban renewal district, and that difference is also returned to the taxing districts. It's savings for them. So for the city, we are one of those taxing districts. So by increasing the frozen tax base by almost 24 million, the city would pay 84,000 less to the urban renewal district, meaning that would stay in the general fund. But since all the taxing districts would be paying less into the urban renewal fund or district, the urban renewal district would see TIF revenue reduced by a little more than $300,000. So I just wanted to run that scenario and run the numbers because the question was brought up. This also doesn't take into account hiring a professional to help us with the process of raising the frozen tax base. I did check with Elaine Howard. She helped with the Urban Renewal Plan Amendment in 2022. She indicated it's a fairly complicated process, so to me that translates to dollars. So I think it would be a pretty expensive endeavor. And also we need to keep in mind that this doesn't take into account future debt service that we had planned on. We didn't go for this last year because of the market. But we'll look at it again and perhaps pursue it in the near future. So because of how this came out, it's really not going to save the general fund a lot. I mean, 84,000 sounds like a lot to me, but in the grand scheme of things, and considering all others, we don't recommend that this would be a good option, but it was a good one to explore. The other piece that I included in the staff report is on page 19. Basically what this comes down to, I wanted to show how the added costs of what Chief went over, the officers, CSO, and picking up 5% of the operating costs and vehicle replacement costs. And also taking into account the revenue that the public safety fee would raise. I just wanted to show how that impacts our 5-year financial plan for the general fund that you're all familiar with as part of our budget process. So by including all of those costs, the revenue that would be generated each year, you can see at the bottom, it does improve our bottom line. And if you'll look at fiscal year 25-26, without these changes and without the public safety fee revenue, we are projected to be at 9%. Our reserve policy is at 12.5. We'd be at 9%, but with the public safety fee and the associated costs, it brings us to a projected 13%. So where we weren't going to meet the reserve policy in 25-26, this will meet it that year. However, you'll see moving forward, it does improve the picture, but it doesn't solve the issue for the general fund. So this shows that it helps, and the intent of the public safety fee was never meant to save the general fund, but to support the police department and help get us to that state average so that we can provide the services for the community.
Sorry, I think we would take any questions that the council may have.
That indeed. Any questions? Go ahead.
I have a number of questions. And since you direct us to page 19, I'll go right to that one. And I don't know that I understand it exactly, but, as I'm watching the revenues, gosh darn it, I wrote that down. The expenses go up in the total police expenditures. They're going up, if you look from FY 25-26 to 26-27, that's an increase of about $209,000, 672. And then the increase then to 27-28 is 193,530, and then finally 28-29, the annual uptick is 226,970. Now, at a time when we're collecting with the public safety fee, far more than that, 500 in 26-27, for example. Well, let's go to 25-26, which would be the first full year. We're collecting 528,000. And then the next year, we're collecting 549,000. And we've got an increase of $209,000. So that's one question. Where's the rest of that going? And as we're looking at the increases that go along with the public safety fee, those are verging on between 3.7 and 4.0% increase. Now, in the resolution, that's limited to 3%. So I'm wondering if there's additional dollars that flow into that somehow, but we're not, because I'm worried about having enough money to do this, because we need to find a way to do it in my mind, but I just want to make sure we've got enough money and we don't get stubbed, in year two and say, oh God, we got to do it again.
So I'll answer the first question, and if you don't mind, after I'm done with that, I'll have you repeat the second question just to make sure I get it right. So the question is, the total police expenditures from year to year are showing a higher increase than the increase year to year in the public safety fee revenue. So if we take, each year, so 25-26, we're projected to raise $528,000 in public safety fee revenue. So this isn't meant to cover the total increase in cost for the police department from year to year. We set a percentage of 5.15%. So 5.15% of just the operating costs, not including the police vehicle cost, is covered, and not the whole difference. So the $528,000 in revenue covers the cost of bringing on Officer 15 for that year, Officer 16, having the community service officer restored to full-time, the 5.15% of operating costs, and vehicle replacement costs. Does that make sense?
I think, and maybe this question will help. The above, the proposed, is without Officer 1516. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So that's why this is our current 5-year plan. So the 3.202 million that goes to 3.697 million, that is without the additional officers. And therefore, the increase each year is less than is being raised because it doesn't include the ads we would make if we have the additional revenue.
sort of, and believe me, I'm a novice at this. I just ask stupid questions.
No, you don't.
But I'm looking at the staff report on page 18. It talks about the five-year projection. Five-year projection of police department is shown below, which is page 19. And which includes those costs that will be covered by the public safety fee. Those costs are the restoring officer 15, and then restoring the CSO to full-time, hiring officer 16 in July, and police vehicle costs. And then there's some, I didn't understand because we have not talked about augmenting the overall police budget. We talked about adding, those four elements. And so I got a little not put off, but derailed, as they say. So if that is not included in 24, 25, or 25, 26, then I'm confused by the staff report.
Okay, well, on page 18, so those three items I listed, Officer 15, the CSO, and Officer 16, those costs on average are $1.65 million. And over the course of 5 years, that's over the course of 5 years, $1.265 million.
I think, Susie, the concern is that the sentence above, the first sentence says, the 5-year projection is shown, which includes these costs.
Yeah, that's where I got.
And I was,
Oh.
and I was asking, does it include the additional costs or not? I thought
Oh,
it
okay.
looked like the numbers were from our current 5-year plan without the additions. But the sentence says the 5-year projections includes the new costs.
On the top of page 19, those do include the costs. Yeah. On the top of page 19, this does include the costs. Yeah.
Right, and so, and then if you go 25 to 25, 26 to FY 27, we increased to $209 or $209,000, while we're collecting $549,000. Now, I'm not opposed to raising that. I'd like to have it attributed. And that's more than 5% of the overall operating cost.
Well, but 5%, the operating costs don't include the capital expenditures of $147,000. So the operating costs are just made up of the personnel services and the materials and services. And in addition to that, a little more background into the numbers. When I calculated that 5%, I didn't include the extra cost for the officers because I felt like that would be double counting. I took the 5% of the existing operating costs. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, the second question is we look at the public safety fee revenue chart, and our first full year is 25, 26, because if this goes, it'll start part way. And then if you go to 26, 27, the difference between 528,000 and 549,000, that's roughly a 4% increase. And the resolution that's before us, or that will be before us at some point, limits the increase to 3%. So it appears that we're over, and that's, we're anticipating more money than we're going to get. And this is precisely my problem with this. We're going to do this, let's do it right. And so we make sure we've got enough money you know, to do what we say we're going to do for the 5-year period and then, you know, and we've got to look in at 3, I know that, but I mean, how did we figure the increase on the public safety revenue?
So we're going to start the public safety fee at 985, and we built in a 3% increase. Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah,
Each
but it's
year?
more than a
Okay.
3% increase.
Right. Well, we factored in a growth of 1% for the growth on the accounts. So that would impact it.
Sure, there we go.
Yeah,
All right,
yeah.
all right.
That was part of the assumptions.
That,
Yeah, we've had, that's a trend, and so they continue to factor that in. The fee won't increase by 4%,
Right.
but the total
Right.
revenue will if we have more
got
meters.
it. Okay,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, that's good. That makes sense. I've got a few others here that speak to the methodology. And so this is a perhaps a Rochelle or perhaps a Susie, but
And Counselor Carey, can I just, one thing you mentioned that you didn't think, you had heard discussion prior to this about also absorbing that sort of 5.15% of the other costs.
yeah.
And that we did discuss that at the town hall and we discussed that in the other materials. So
Yeah, okay, well, I missed,
we didn't feature it clearly as prominently, but it has been included in prior calculations.
it's a cleaner deal, and it's needed, but it's a cleaner deal if we can say, we're restoring number 15, and we're going to add number 16, and we're going to do the CSO, and we're going to buy the vehicles, which I've got an issue with there too, but we'll get to that. So fine, I missed that. How many, you know, in one of the discussions we had at the town hall had to do with how to equitably distribute this, and using electric meters was thought to be the best. And I don't know that we ever, whether we ever figured out how many meters are on some of the bigger organizations. How many meters is, and you don't have this right now maybe, but ballpark, how many meters or accounts that would be metered does Western Oregon University have? Yeah. They have 2. How many does the city of Monmouth have? No, the city of Monmouth, not the, yeah.
I don't have that.
Sure. Sure. And some of those would be probably exempt. Yeah. Fire district? Yeah.
They don't have a station in. Fire district doesn't have a station in the Monmouth city limits. This is only going to apply to.
Sure. Oh, yeah. I thought that was on the other side of the line. I'm sorry.
Nope.
And how about MES and Ash Creek?
They have 1 each, I believe.
Any of the larger, would there be any reason that Roth would have more than 1? For example, or Bimart? I'm just trying to think of who might. Yeah. Yeah.
Can someone repeat that into the mic for online?
Yeah, so what Director Wade Carey said for Monmouth Elementary and for Roths and Weimar, places like that, most of them would have 1 unless there's an auxiliary one.
Yeah. Okay, well, that, I don't know how we solve that. That's a bit of a disparity in a couple of cases there. I don't know how we resolve that one. And, yeah, I think there's a way, I just don't know what that is, you know.
Counselor Belts?
Well, I was just thinking, given the fact that we're now talking about making exceptions for low income, I think we then need to look at making exceptions for organizations that have higher income, for lack of a better way, larger use. So if we're going to make one exception at one end, I think we need to think about the other as well.
Counselor Overs?
I want to note, John, at the bottom of page 2 of the actual resolution, section 7, sub 3, it calls on us to review this at the end of the 3rd year to determine if it's still required, whether the amount of the fee is required, whether a different amount of public safety fee should be assessed to electrical service account by account classes. And we did talk about different account classes at one point. And Wayne, I'm going to throw this at you. Is there any reason that we couldn't come back to that sooner than 3 years if we determine that we need to look more closely at account classes?
Yeah, no, in fact, under sub 2, you are actually reviewing it annually. I think what I understood was that you wanted to make a special point of reviewing it at the end of the 3rd year, but you're reviewing this constantly. So as the council, you can come back and revisit this anytime you want.
Okay.
And I think one of the points of discussion about considering different rates for different classes of customers is that we're doing a rate class study this year. So we would create an ordinance listing these different things, and by next July have a completely different breakdown. So that's why I think we decided to start off with this simple, if
Right.
not perhaps
Perfect.
it might be equal, but not completely equitable, just to get started and see how that.
One of the other, I guess, questions and observations that I had is the inclusion of vehicles. That's an essential item. And I would hate, you know, I guess I'm a little nervous about putting that into something that is going to arguably sunset in 5 years. Now what do we do? So I'm just wondering whether there's something else that perhaps could be funded by that. Perhaps, and I don't have a solution. I'm not in that area, but we got to have vehicles and we got to replace them on the rate that we're replacing them. We've proven that, but to have that on it makes me nervous.
Yeah, and I don't know that I have the answer for that. I mean, I would just echo what you're saying. I mean, they're non-optional in as first responders, we have to be able to respond. We need the vehicles. This year, I think it was out of a need that we weren't able to fund a vehicle, and we wanted to ensure kind of moving forward that we would be able to do that. I don't know that this is the best mechanism, but I don't know that we had another one at the time without looking to make further and deeper cuts somewhere else in the general fund to allow for that.
And this is really more to council than to you all, but to me, it's a real easy one to go from getting our CSO officer back to full-time, getting our 15th back to where we were, and then the vehicles, I mean, I don't know, have a better solution. And I believe there's a need for the 16th officer, but we sort of go through that I mean, this is a very abbreviated process to add another police officer, another full-time employee of the city. And we went through that a year ago, and it came back on us. So, and you've given some explanation of the value and the real impact of that. I mean, I would be interested in how many singles will this eliminate? I mean, I don't know. I mean, something tangible and concrete that the residents can say, man, glad we got that 16th. I mean, because this is a fast track deal. Normally that starts in the budget committee, you know, and we didn't talk about the 16th in the budget committee, we talked about the 15th. And so anyway, I just, the more information we can get on that, I think that would be very helpful. So we got a solid case.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you. What's hard for me to, I guess, give absolutes is that what I wish for and what I think we could do sometimes doesn't happen. Call it Murphy's Law or whatever you want to call it, but we see a lot of that, you know, especially in a 24/7, again, operation, there's a lot of variables. And, you know, I think I wish that I could say that, you know, 80% of the time this will give us, you know, 2-person minimums. That's just not, it's not the reality. I can tell you that it will give us more. It gives us more options, and it gives us more coverage, but I don't know how often that will be. I mean, it will go into a mid-shift position, but I don't know, again, how much, how many vacancies we'll have that year. I mean, part of the idea for this too is to maintain staffing to where they have coverage so that we don't lose additional people. I guess that's one of the other things that we didn't talk about a whole lot is that, you know, if you run too thin, you know, officers, one, it's a more dangerous situation both for the officer and or for the community, but people get tired of that fatigue, we'll call it, and stress, and they might look to go other places. And so that's another part of this that we want to make sure that we maintain a more appropriate level of staffing to not lose more, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense. If we can make the life of our officers better, a happy officer is one that's going to stay, and it's a hell of a lot cheaper to retain than to hire. So, and train, because it's 9 months getting there. So I guess I still have a little heartburn on that, but I appreciate where you are, and I'm in support of it. It's just, I'm a little nervous on the process. You know, I'm sorry to have, but anybody else?
I have one just real quick.
Please.
Add on to that. John, just to add on to that. Part of what I'm looking at right now, we've got 14. And what we really have is 12, just shy of 12.
Oh, sure.
And so if we went to 16, we might effectively be at 14 with the leaves and everything else that people get. And that puts us close to where we need to be in actual operational terms to have a reasonable number of officers available on a regular basis. 14 would feel a whole lot better than 12. And when we have all 16 on, we're golden. That's going to be great. But the reality is 16 does not mean we've always got 16 on. And so those 2 extra officers really will make a difference, I think.
Yep, and reminder, this is questions of staff, and we'll deliberate after we hear public comment too,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Well, yeah, the surcharge is in that section of the resolution. So it's saying you're going to use it for these police services and the 40 cents to fund the organization, and that's all. So it's included in the limitation on the use of the fund.
Was not mentioned in all the whereases is what threw me a little bit.
Well, the whereases are just setting things up. The text of the resolution is what really counts.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
so we're on now, and good to know that they're okay with it. What sort of accounting could we expect to come back from them on that? The FCO group? We're going to send them $1,700 a month. How are they going to account for that? And while you're at it, if it's $1,700 a month and $10.25 is the fee, that's 165 electrical hookups. How many cancellations do we normally have, or shut-offs do we have in a week?
Well, To answer your first question, Polk FCO currently administers our utility assistance program for our utility accounts. We send them $10,000 a year. They keep a register of how that's used each month, and they send that to us, and we reconcile to it. This would operate in the same way. It'd be very similar to that. So we would keep track of what we send them. They do their accounting, and then we reconcile to what they show.
Second part then, would that be limited only to the public safety fee, the $10? I mean, would that be how that would be allocated?
Yes, it would. And we would have to work with Polk FCO on a new agreement where they would establish, or together we would establish rules and how people would be eligible for it and all that so that they could administer the program.
So the people then that are in their system would have access to it, but other people that are not in their system would not have access to a rebate. Unless we'd have to communicate that pretty well with all of our ratepayers.
I
Yeah.
think it wouldn't be a rebate. It'd be people who have struggling paying utility bills would be able to have an additional opportunity to apply for assistance. And it's not just people currently in their system. They can add people all the time. If people are struggling to pay utility bills, we'll know about it. They'll be, and we can send them to FCO to see if they qualify for the program.
Sure, that educational piece would be good. Now, we can't do a shut off for people that don't pay this fee.
Right.
So the woman that's concerned about nationwide police brutality can simply subtract $10.50 from her bill, and she's not going to have to pay that.
That's correct.
How are we going to track the revenue on that? I mean, I guess my point is we'd need to track the revenue pretty closely on that.
Yeah. And we would. I don't know that I have the answer to the how
Yeah.
right now, so.
Oh, we're just talking
yeah,
about it.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're just talking about
yeah.
it. I'm asking these questions because and I'm fully in support of the concept. But I want to make certain that we've got the methodology right, we've got the dollars right. This is going to work. Because it's a $10.25 increase during the same time that we've increased water 5.5. Stormwater is up 5%, and Monmouth Power and Light, $1 plus 4% increase. So we're kind of layering on things here, and this to me is an essential one. But for that reason, we need to be, in my mind, we need to be really on it. Thanks for the information.
Madam Mayor, just to answer Councilor Carey's question about methodology and mechanics, this resolution is drafted substantially on the Dallas Public Safety Fee Resolution that has been in effect for several months. So it has been implemented based on terms that you're seeing here. Dallas doesn't have the public assistance component, but you've already got that established with Polk FCO. But otherwise, the methodology, the collection method, the billing process, the model is 9 miles away, and it's working under the terms of that are substantially the same as what you have here.
Great, thank you, Elaine. Any other questions?
Quick follow-up for Lane on that. What are you seeing in Dallas from sitting in Dallas council meetings and hearing the input in terms of refusal to pay the fee?
Nothing.
Very low.
Yeah, well, it hasn't been reported. They're still in the first year, so I don't think you'll probably see those numbers until the end of the
Okay,
first
just
year.
curious.
Yeah,
Thanks.
yeah.
All right, at this time then, we'll take public comment. We do have one submitted in person, so Chief and Susie will let you step back for a moment. And Jason Ridgway. And we have a new timer system we're testing out, so yeah, over here.
Ready?
Go, coach, go.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council. First, I wanted to start off by thanking the Monmouth Police Department for the work that they put in. Appreciated the presentation that Chief Haynes and Lieutenant Olson did several weeks back. I think if anything, they were a little bit modest in the demands that they meet and the challenges that they meet in doing their job. Certainly the staffing, being understaffed is a real thing, and in public safety, which I work, I'm a little biased in this, but when you lose staff to approved leave, to vacation, which hopefully they're taking to stay healthy, to take care of their families, it leaves other people holding the bag. So there's overtime that hasn't been mentioned yet. There's additional strain on their coworkers. And those are things that I believe make a strong case for Monmouth Police raising their staffing bar to be comparable to other cities of like size. Fully support the addition of at least a 15th officer, if not a 16th. The community service officer is difficult to maintain at a 0.8 FTE. You need to maintain and retain good employees. Difficult to do that if you're only offering part-time salary. So that I strongly support. My concern is that this particular venue and method of raising that money is a little concerned. There's an ability for 3 individuals to make a decision on imposing a fee on all Monmouth citizens for $10, which sounds like will go up each year at a fixed amount. There's not a vote, there's not a levy, there's not an opportunity, a special session of a imposed public safety fee. That's all I have for tonight. Thank you. I like the clock. I'll sing. No, I won't.
All right. Sorry. Thank you, Thank you, Jason, and thank you for your comments and for testing out our timer for us. So we appreciate that. All right, and that brings us to deliberation. And Chief and Susie, just in case you want to come back up, in case there are any additional thoughts or questions you can weigh in on. We do have a motion in the packet if we would like to move forward to consider this resolution 1996 as presented. I think it's 97. The packet says 96, but it's 97, isn't it? Ignore the packet, just look at the resolution.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd actually like to just briefly address the concern nationally that we have with police departments across the country. And I think the really amazing work that this police department has done in educating or providing trainings for their officers to work on implicit bias, to have the ability, when you are training constantly on how to bring down the bad guy with this much, and then you have this much on implicit bias, this is the go-to But I think our police officers are getting the training that that is really much more in balance than we can see across the country in other police departments. I'm not studied on that, but I'm actually very appreciative of the work that Chief Haynes has done to make that happen here in the department. And I have personally seen how officers have come up and addressed individuals in the park that looked like they're struggling. It was all very polite. It was a de-escalation of the entire, it was just like chatting with the bros, you know, so maybe I shouldn't say it like that, but it was just, it was all very positive. And I even went up and addressed, or I talked to the individual after the officers left, and he was actually indicated a pretty positive connection with the police officers, and it's like, oh no, they're my buddies, and they are always helping me. So really, I think the Monmouth Police Department, I'm very proud of the officers and the work that they're doing with our residents in the city.
I would sort of appreciate having a full council here to go through this. There's a lot of information here. I spent most of the day on it today and obviously didn't get much of it. Right. But you know, I mean, I would feel better if we had, you know, if we could delay this with a full council, and a little more time to digest it. But I'm good to go either way. I'm just worried about, you know, and when I was talking about the methodology, more the financial methodology and calculating the amount of things, I didn't get back to the work session notes, but that's just my thought.
Yeah, Counselor Lopez has a class that has been conflicting with this and continues to be a conflict. And then Counselor Salinas Oliveros is out tonight because her family is leaving the country. So she's taking care of that. So for purposes of discussion then, as a reminder, of course, the Budget Committee did discuss this. We did talk, and it was actually a Budget Committee member recommendation that we consider this fee. That was in June. We've had multiple opportunities to discuss, so it didn't necessarily just spring up out of our conversations. And I appreciate that these calculations are complex. We've kind of tried a couple of different things. We've had a couple of different options considered, and it's been, again, sort of a discussion about if we implement this to get started, we know we have some stability and some security to be able to restore the services that we are missing out on. If you look in here, this would, by going now, we would have enough surety that we would be able to hire back the 15th position and the CSO in January. And I believe then we've budgeted that the 16th officer wouldn't be until next fiscal year. Is that correct? Right. So that we have enough built up to be able to feel comfortable that this would be sustainable. And that's the other issue. We don't want to hire these people and then jigger it out of existence, right? So, but the timing was established to be able to start this now, to be able to hire in January and get the benefit, as we know, of that 15th officer having to potentially not even be available until July, but to be at least starting that training regimen. So. Councilor McKee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And Councilor Carey, I just have to say, you have a really good head for budget, so you're much more humble than I think that you know, your capacity there, as I already told you, is amazing. I look at this very simplistically, but my concern was that we're going up 3% a year on that $9 fee. but at the same time, we're increasing the amount of meters by 1%. So my concern is, well, maybe we don't need to increase this fee as much after the first, second year. The reason I think I'm okay with this is because we're going to review this every year. And so if it's turning out that money, we're collecting too much money for the use of the police officers, because it says very distinctly, this is going to be used for this intention, then we can come back, correct, and change that. And everybody's going to be happy. And if it turns out that, no, this is the rate we need to do, then they're going to be happy that they have an extra police officer instead of going another year without a police officer. So I think voting to try this is kind of a safe thing to do, because we have within the proposal itself checks to say we're not just going to do this forever.
And I appreciate the language that says if other funding sources become available, right? Thank you. And Counselor Ober.
So, as council knows, I've spoken on a few occasions about how broken Oregon's property tax system is. And that's why we're here. That's the kind of the piece that's in the shadows that we're not talking about directly, because it's a very indirect impact, but it's there. And it's something I would ask the residents of Monmouth to keep in mind, is that the reason we're here is property taxes are broken. We've set this thing up as a 5-year plan. And my most fervent hope is that after 2 or 3 years, we do away with it, because the legislature steps up and does the right thing. Or the voters of the people of Oregon, voters of the state of Oregon step up and do the right thing and reform this broken system. It's a legitimate question. Are property taxes the right way to fund local government? That's what we're stuck with for now anyway. So, we'll do what we can do with what we've got. As I read these comments and I think back to the town hall, for those of you in the audience, we got a packet of comments that were submitted to the city over the course of the last little while. And I'm thrilled with the addition of the low income assistance piece. We heard repeatedly, what about low income people, et cetera. And I thank staff for sitting down and looking at that and thinking about a creative way to offer assistance for folks who can't afford it. We had somebody at the town hall who said, paying $10 a month is nothing to me, but kind of looking at all of us and saying, but I'm looking at y'all to take care of people who can't afford it. And so, I'm thrilled to see this piece in here. And one final little bit that just kind of a reminder again, Monmouth has a large number of nonprofits of one sort and another, be it some of our group homes, churches, the university, schools, other places that don't pay property taxes at all. And the one thing I'll say, it's not much, but at least those nonprofits that have electric meters will be contributing to our police coverage. It's a drop in the overall bucket, but every little drop will help in getting us to where we need to be. This police department is behind the curve right now. It's doing incredible work with the resources it's being given. We've hit in America this little stretch where prices have gone up for a lot of things, and labor included. And we've got to figure out a way to cover that. And, a levy would be great. It would take a while to get in place. It doesn't solve our police department's problem right away. Nonprofits wouldn't pay that. There's a number of reasons where I believe a fee is actually preferable to something like a levy. And I want to see Chief and his crew get the help they need to do the job that we're asking them to do in Monmouth, because right now they're shorthanded. And we really need to figure a way to get them the help they need. And to me, this is expeditious. It's not perfect. Asking for more money never is. But running things like police departments and water systems and sewer systems and electrical systems cost. It's expensive. And we've got to figure out how to pay for all those things. And you all are a key piece of this community. So I'll just stop there. Thanks.
Counselor McKeel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I'm wondering to address Councilor Carey's concern, because the last time I didn't listen to him about a budget concern, he turned out to be correct. And I told him that. I wonder if we go ahead and set this up so that we do get that 15th officer, because that's to replace the one, but we hold off on that plan for the 16. I know it's not for another year, but rather than saying this is what we will do in a year, we review that aspect as well to see how this fund is doing and the satisfaction that we have of having this additional fee and how it's covering these costs with the police department. Instead of saying, we will hire the 16th officer, we just wait. And maybe that's the same thing, but.
Although I would hesitate to tell the community we're hiring a 16th officer and say, well, we're going to wait. This is built to be able to do that in July. So, although the budget committee will be reviewing things. So, Councilor Obers.
Just, I think, Carol, I would understand what you're saying, but at the same time, if we're going to hire number 16 next July, the reality is they're not going to hit the streets until, on an unsupervised basis until well into 2026. And so we need to just, if we're going to do this, we need to go ahead and let the professionals who have told us we need 16 to go ahead and follow their advice on when those 16 get in. I do understand what you're saying there.
And to go along with that, sorry, as I'm bouncing back and forth, but part of this is the population increase that's projected, is that we would need the 16th officer, correct? I'm looking at nods there.
Well, it is. We want to position ourselves in a good spot moving forward, but I would articulate, I guess, I hope that I can articulate that we would really use that position now. 16, and even though I talked about this before, but there's these national averages and state averages and all that stuff. I think that they're numbers, but they are a metric. And I will say that even at 16, we would be under the state average just slightly. And so we want to be, not just want to, but we think that it's important to be comparable with other similar size agencies so that we're not losing our people to those agencies and that we can answer the call for service. And I know that I always go back to this, and it's not just the one metric, but when I talk about, we're seeing the effects of this already. We don't track, like the fire department, we don't always track our response times. But if we did, I think that our response times have gone down. Our ability to do traffic enforcement has clearly gone down, and we're starting to see some impacts from that by way of complaints and other things, just driving behaviors around town. So yes, we think that 16 would be a good spot even into the future, but we would say that we need 16 now. So
I think they need a 16th officer just to track me going through stop signs. So
Thank you, Councilor McKeel, for that admission. Now we know where to station an officer. All right, I would consider a motion so we can move forward one way or t'other.
I move adoption of resolution number 1997, a resolution establishing a public safety fee.
Is there a second?
I will second that.
Thank you, Councilor McKeel, for the motion and Councilor Oberst for the second. Is there additional discussion? Councilor Carey.
And a couple of people have mentioned it, but if there's any question about the difficult job that you guys have, and when you're understaffed, it's even worse. Just read the Friday notes from last week and the diverse responses and the different types of things that had to be resolved. I read that and I thought, holy cow, that underlines the importance of our people. A couple things that I want to, before we get, because I didn't get the question articulated correctly. If we're going to increase this fee, should it pass, by 3%, is that enough? I mean, we're behind in the general fund because of the 3% limitation right now. And how do you calculate, the upward trends? And I'm not, I'm just trying to figure out whether we've got in that increase, not in the more meters or anything else, is 3% enough?
Well, for what we're projecting, based on what we know now, we're showing that it's enough to cover the costs that we have built into this. But it's not intended to solve the issues that the general fund is having. We'll still have to look for alternative revenue sources. With that, I will say that I will plan to bring an accounting of the revenue that this generates and the expenses so that we can, keep an eye on how we're doing, how they line up with the projections so that the council is able to make a decision moving forward when we come back and review this in a year.
Yeah, I mean, I get nervous about the 3% because the 3% isn't doing it for us, and
The rest of the general fund increases by about roughly 3% or a little more each year. So it's something. It's something. And it's something that we can tie to another metric, which is the property tax limitation.
well, that's true. I just would hate to see us get into a situation where we have to, and thank goodness we've got the annual review, but I'd like to get us off on the right foot, I guess. Now, on the surcharge, it's, as I read the resolution, it says that the city manager would negotiate with FCO for the deal. I've heard discussion about people that are having a hard time with their electric bills. Just yes or no, is this fee that we're going, the surcharge, would that be for the $10.25 only, or would that dig deeper into, other people with difficulty in paying the electric bill?
Well, it's intended to be for those who are impacted by the public safety fee.
That's everyone.
Yeah. And it would be based on the criteria that's set when we work with Polk FCO on, to determine who would be eligible. We'll have to work with them to set criteria to determine eligibility. So potentially, I mean, it's likely all 4,294 accounts won't apply for assistance. It's just those that are really impacted by this fee, and if they meet the eligibility requirements that come out of the agreement that gets negotiated with Polk FCO.
I'm glad we have an assistance program for that, because people, as we've all articulated, have that need, and the shut-off day is a challenging day for a lot of people. This is a public safety fee. So I would hope that we would limit it to that, I think. We may have to have some more discussion about that. But if we're going to pass this as a public safety fee, and that's those people that are negatively impacted and can't pay that, will offset that. It would be a little, we'd have to think about whether we want to go beyond the $10 for 25.
Yeah, our utility customers have access to the utility assistance that comes out of our Monmouth Power and Light budget, the $10,000. In addition to that, there's state assistance for electric and water. So they do have that extra assistance available.
All right. And any other discussion or questions? I mean, we do have a motion on the floor, but if you have other discussion or questions, we can certainly entertain them now. Hearing none. Phyllis, could you please do the roll call, please, on resolution number 1997, a resolution establishing a public safety fee?
Counselor Carey,
Aye.
Counselor McKeel,
Yes.
Counselor Belts,
Aye.
Counselor Oberst.
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
All right, thank you very much. And now to implementation. So appreciate the discussion. And John Kerry, appreciate, as again, your thorough reconsideration of this. It really is important. And thank you, everyone, for all of the work that's led to this. Our next item of business, and I think we'll go ahead. Let's see. Where's my agenda? Yeah, let's go ahead and take care of this one, and then maybe we'll take a quick break since we're at 8 o'clock. So, Carter, no pressure, but
Alrighty.
Carter Craig, our community planner.
Turn on the timer, please.
I have no incentive to make this last any longer, so we can jump right in. I'm here today to give an oral staff report on the consideration of the adoption of the 2024 update to the Natural Hazard Mitigation Plan. This is just sort of as a refresher. We spoke about this back in April at a workshop. It's a countywide plan that seeks to identify the risks associated with the various types of natural hazard, as well as some ongoing policy action items to help mitigate those hazards. It includes a City of Monmouth addendum, along with other jurisdictional addendums covered in Polk County that addresses some of our specific geography as it relates to those natural hazards, and contains our city actions for mitigation. Sort of an update on what's happened since our workshop. The plan has gone through and received preliminary approvals pending, local adoption from both the Oregon Emergency Management and the Federal Emergency Management Agency. We discussed last time when we were talking about this the importance of close collaboration with the university, and sort of as an update on that, a lot of their work shows, a lot of alignment with some of the things that we're talking about in the natural hazard mitigations plan, from their heating and cooling system upgrades, seismic upgrades to some of their structures. Their recently updated master plan contains some alignment, looking for ways to manage and collect and collaboratively manage stormwater with the city. So there's quite a bit of alignment between actions that WU is taking and actions outlined in the natural hazard mitigation plan. We also did some public outreach. We advertised this meeting in the IO 2 weeks in advance. We posted on the website. So far, we have not received any public comment. That's my update. That's my staff report. I'm happy to stand for questions about the plan or the process or anything.
Well, you didn't get any public comment? Nobody wanted to go through the hazard mitigation?
No, we
plan?
didn't. No.
Questions? Go ahead, Councilor McKeel.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have two questions. One is, we list the cooling and heating centers on page 38. And then the description of extreme heat on page 65. My concern is, for the cooling and heating centers, we list the library and the senior center, but the library is closed at 6 p.m. when during an extreme heat situation, it's still really hot at 6. And the same thing for the senior center. I'm not sure that it's open just for those times. And so I'm wondering if we really can, it's nice to use those, but I think if we're going to use those, I wonder if we need to get more serious about having the library open after 6 for those extreme heat situations, et cetera.
I think that's a great point. I think this plan is aimed at identifying facilities that could fulfill that function. And then as we move into implementing the plan, I think to your point, having processes and policies or how we would activate a cooling center, how we would use a facility past its typical hours. I think that's on the implementation side that we need to look at those sort of questions.
Great, thank you. So we'll get to that in the implementation phase of this,
Mhm.
okay. So I have one other question also then, as you're listing on page 53, the schools, I'm not gonna be able to go to that page, but it looks like you have, if I remember correctly, the elementary schools are listed there, but we don't list the Montessori school, which now has up to third grade. So if this is the list of locations where there are vulnerable populations, do we need to include the Montessori school and any daycares that we might have in town? Or maybe that's not your intention, so never mind.
Yeah, I do not recall specifically what definition we used to include a facility, and it may have been an oversight not to include the Montessori school in that list of facilities.
We have other preschools though and other
Right, yeah.
childcare, and I'm not sure how you would list them all.
Well, is the point to list the vulnerable, and maybe it's my fault that I didn't read that closely enough to figure out why those were listed. Is
Oh.
it because it's a vulnerable
No, it's
population or a building?
because they're considered essential facilities.
Oh, got it, okay,
So
okay.
that's
All right.
why.
I retract
Oh.
that question.
Sounds good.
Counselor Ober.
Same page. Government lists volunteer hall, which would be really hard to serve as a facility at this point. And it doesn't
Page
list this
51 of the
building.
plan. Yeah, on the back there. Yeah. Get rid of volunteer hall.
So just.
It's page 51 of the packet, I think.
Yeah,
so-
53 in our packet and page 25 of the document.
Page MA 25 of the plan
Yes.
lists the essential facilities, and it does list volunteer hall under government.
That's under critical. Okay, I see it now. Yeah. upper
MA
page.
25.
Yes, I was looking for perhaps another table because I know I updated that when I sent the information to you about IPRE. So I think it may be reflected in one of the appendices.
Okay.
I have a couple also corrections or just things that might have changed, so I'll just give you the list after the meeting, if that's okay.
All right, perhaps then we would adopt with potential Scribner's error corrections available later.
Carter, in the staff report, I think it references that some of the data or some of the information you got from public comment talked about the articulation with Western Oregon, which was all good. And it might have been me that mentioned that I had some concerns about wildfire in the Ash Creek area. And I'm looking on page 68, and I'm not asking for anything other than just so you're aware, if I can get to it. It talks about the assessment, 63, 64, 67. It shows the all blue map, low risk for the city of Monmouth. And then at the bottom, vulnerability assessment. Due to insufficient data and resources, Monmouth is currently unable to perform a complete qualitative risk assessment or exposure analysis for this hazard. And it might be worth doing a walk around down there because while it's not likely to threaten the entire city, there's an entire neighborhood that runs along that Ash Creek, Middle Fork, I believe that is. And this time of year it's pretty dry. Now, fortunately, the grasslands to the north of that are tilled now, but you get something going in there, and there's no one living in there now, but that's always a vulnerability. So just star it at some point when you get to it. In a number of cases, it's, and not a bunch, but a number, there are mitigation strategies that were identified, and they were identified as still relevant, yes or no. And we've got several yeses that are incomplete or not done. Now, I'm not worried about that because it's a big job, but does that put us in any jeopardy? Are we vulnerable for any sort of lack of funding or FEMA violation or legal stuff?
No, this plan has been approved, preliminary approved by FEMA already, so it passes muster with the federal and state counterparts.
Okay. That was my only concern. I wasn't concerned that it hadn't been mitigated or planned. I just wanted to make sure we weren't in trouble.
CIS is okay. Okay, and I would like a motion at some point, so go ahead, Counselor Ober.
Well, sorry, I thought I had it on. In depth and covers a lot of ground and was prepared by folks who do this for a living, and I appreciate the effort that went into this. There may be a few small issues here and there, but I'm sure that it will be addressed after I move to adopt resolution number 1996.
I'll second that, and I thank you, Carter. This is very good.
Thank you, Counselor Oberst, for the motion, and Counselor McKeel for the second. Any additional questions or comments? Phyllis, could you do the roll call, please, on resolution number 1996, a resolution adopting the City of Monmouth representation in the updates to the Polk County multi-jurisdictional natural hazards mitigation.
Counselor Oberst,
Yes.
Counselor McKeel,
Yes.
Counselor Carey,
Aye.
Counselor Beltz,
Aye.
motion passes 4-0.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Carter. And I have 8:05 on our nice new big timer clock. So I'm going to give you 10 big-sized minutes to take a quick break, and we will reconvene.
Yeah. Since she's going to have 2 meters and they've got 2 meters.
And that came up. They just have mainline meters.
The only thing I can think of is make a percentage for kilowatt hours used. No, I know. No, I know. I got it. I know.
So that's.
Yes. Oh, okay.
So we want to set up interviews. Would you like?
I'm game, sure. You set something up.
Okay.
And of course, Steve's been there before. How many openings we have? One or two? Okay. And then, Leah London.
Just that I'm gonna go give this to.
Okay, are you doing Leah tonight? For arts? Leah London? Oh, okay. Are you appointing?
Oh, shit.
Okay. She's really good. I know her. Are you okay? Don't worry about you. Yeah, now, she visited with all the city of Pop. He just, they moved to that. He was not responsive. So now Juan's in. Okay. Yeah, it's neat.
I'm hungry and I want something to eat and I'm cranky, but I would rather have that than nothing.
All right, we shall reconvene. Thank you to the timekeeper, Counselor Carey, for getting us back here. And that brings us to another item, our regional water project update. And here he is, the water expert himself, Russ Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor Kuntz and members of council. I will say that this study through this particular topic makes me feel like I'm not the expert and I've got lots to learn. But tonight, the item that I'm bringing to you is seeking your authorization to direct staff, city manager, and myself to move forward with negotiating an IGA outlining a partnership between Polk County and the cities of Independence and Monmouth to share in the cost of conducting a feasibility study and pre-design for a regional surface water treatment plant. I'll give you a little bit of background, share why the particular recommendation, brief little explanation of the process and some of the steps that we see moving forward. So back in October of last year and in March, I met with you in work session to talk about Monmouth's long-term source water planning as it is outlined in our 2020 water master plan. At that time, I also made you aware of efforts by Polk County to test the feasibility or interest of water purveyors in partnering on a regional surface water plant. Polk County, Monmouth, and Independence all have surface water rights on the Willamette River that currently are not being used, and that each of them has a need to be put into beneficial use, or each entity risks losing those rights. During Polk County's effort, they concluded that a partnership between the county, the cities of Monmouth, Independence, and Dallas should receive, further look into building a regional water treatment plant on the Willamette River. If you read the local paper just recently, you'll see that Dallas is moving in a different direction and is expanding their Mercer Reservoir water source. So that left Monmouth, Independence, and Polk County at the table to have a discussion about a regional surface water plant. Our current water master plan, as discussed, does not have a surface water treatment plant in our planning horizon, 20-year planning horizon. It does fall just outside of that horizon, so our next planning window would have a surface water treatment plant included in it. Monmouth also has, as I mentioned earlier, a Willamette River surface water right application that expires in August of 2026. And what that means is that the city either needs to put that to beneficial use, or we risk losing that water right. To put it to beneficial use means, basically constructing something that demonstrates that we're moving forward toward implementing and using that water right. About 3 years after Monmouth adopted our 2020 water master plan, Independence adopted their 2023 water master plan. And their master plan identified the construction of a surface water treatment plant as their highest source water priority. So a combination of Polk County testing the water, wanting to ensure that their water rights that they have on the Willamette River are put to beneficial use for all water purveyors in the county. Independence's direction toward moving toward a surface water treatment plant, and kind of the discussions about the way to make that happen would be to have a regional partnership between the three entities. We're at the table discussing the possibility of that. What might that look like? At that time, the county presented the two cities with a draft IGA, intergovernmental agreement, that would kind of outline the steps for doing a feasibility study at a particular location. Would it work? Would we be able to use, would that location be able to handle all of the water rights that the three entities have on the river? That was a few months ago. We're in transition with city managers. Our master plan doesn't even talk about a surface water plant. So I asked, can Monmouth take 6 months to just kind of look at this concept and get a better grasp of what does that mean? What are the implications for the city of Monmouth and an IGA, and the ability to kind of look at the IGA. A carefully crafted IGA is really foundational in this process as we move forward. Why is staff recommending Monmouth Partner in there? In your staff report, or my staff report in your packet, I identify a couple of them. One, partnering on a treatment plant provides an economy of scale that brings the cost per gallon down for the ratepayer. As I had mentioned, Monmouth already knows that at some point in the next planning window, we'll need to construct a surface water treatment plant in order to maximize our surface water right that we have right now. And I could go into that, but that's another rabbit trail over here. But that we know that we need to do that in order to maximize our current surface water right. A regional partnership of the three entities coming together provides the greatest possibility of us getting a large grant or some other form of alternative funding to mitigate the impact of construction on water user rates. Currently, both at the state and the national level, there are some large grant opportunities for water infrastructure specific. And I think because this is a regional activity, positions us well for that. And then if affordable, to me, that's what creates the most concern for me, is the affordability. But if affordable, a regional treatment plant will position Monmouth well into the future for our current residents and business opportunities. And so for that reason, I think now is a good time to get in the process, in that feasibility process, and look at it from Monmouth's perspective and say, is now really the best time for us to construct a surface water treatment plant, partner on that, and what does that mean? The process that we'll go through is really two large phases or two large agreements. One is this first IGA that is more of a feasibility and pre-design that will ask the question, can it be done? And in my mind, what will it look like and what will it cost? So that's this first IGA. We'll negotiate that, and city manager and myself will do our best to ensure that Monmouth is represented well in that IGA. And then once we have a draft, that'll come back to council for their review and authorization to enter into the agreement. The second phase would be another form of agreement that would outline how do we construct it. If we decide to move forward, how do we construct it? How do we operate it? What's the governance? What does that look like? And kind of that moving forward with the nuts and bolts of partnering long term. As I've identified, some of my primary concerns are just the affordability and impact on our ratepayers. We want to make sure that we control that as much as we can and that we understand what that is before we make some of these long-term decisions. And also as we're developing these IGAs, and specifically this first one, and once we move into the second one, off-ramps are really not we're committed at that point, but that we have off-ramps in the IGA, that if it's not right for Monmouth, that we're able to move back out of the agreement and continue on. Financial implications, during our budget process, we set aside $200,000 in ARPA funds for participating in this feasibility study process. The implications after that, I mean, that's kind of why we're doing, is understand what is the cost. So we'll have a much better sense financially at a later stage in this process. In your staff report, provide some alternatives. One is to authorize the city manager to negotiate on behalf of the city. Other might be that you may have specific content or detail that you think is important for staff to consider in the negotiation. Or you may choose that now is not the best time and that maybe you want more information, or you do not want to proceed forward. And so that would be another alternative. I think that covers most of what I wanted to cover. I don't know if the city manager wanted to add anything about potential funding opportunities or her experience in that, but otherwise, we're both available for questions.
I think the one thing that I would like to add is one of the funding sources that is becoming available is the Water Resources Development Act. It was started in the Senate in the fall. It just cleared the House on, I think, July 22nd. And now it goes back to the Senate for a full floor vote. That money is going to be a huge pot of money that's going to be allocated for water projects. Because this is regional, and in talking with the city manager of Independence and looking at that, if we can go after those funds, as well as congressional direct spending funds, as well as state funds. The other piece is looking at all of us partnering and hiring a lobbyist in the DC area that would be able to help us with this, because this is going to be a huge funding package. This could be anywhere from 40 to 60 million. I mean, I'm kind of guessing, but up in that realm. And so having having this collaboration and taking this and going and working with our legislators to be able to get this will be, it's got a great opportunity because of the regionalness of it and the ability to provide water for the future. So that's one of the things that's different than before. And so with that funding source out there, we really want to try to go after that funding.
I just have one thing, and then Councilor Obers. So, and Russ, talk to us a second. So our water rights, 2026. My understanding is it used to be kind of easy to get those extended and say, yeah, gee, we're planning, and oh yeah, we got ideas, and get an extension. And now this substantial use means, is there anything else we could construct that you think would satisfy?
Sure. So two answers there. One is I would say in the last 5 years, water resources has been challenged by both the governor and the legislature to do a better job of managing water rights in Oregon. We've got various water basins that are over allocated, and they're running into issues with depleting aquifers. And so water has become more important, and for the Department of Water Resources, managing them has become a different priority. So it has gotten harder to just get an extension on a water right. In the past, it was not as difficult to apply for an extension, say something as simple as our planning window doesn't show we need it until 10 years out, so it is getting more difficult. With regard to Monmouth and our surface water right, we do have a path forward with showing beneficial use of that water right, so that I'm not concerned that we'll lose that. And that path would be amending that right to what it is amend the right to a groundwater right for use on the Willamette River well fields, which we're already looking to implement. That's already one of our priorities. That would secure the right and allow us to get an extension on the right as we work toward partnering with on a regional concept. The point of appropriation is within the same, basically same location, same impact, and that right could be transferred, or a portion of that right can be transferred to a collector well or the regional treatment plant. So hopefully that doesn't throw too much into the conversation there, but from staff's perspective, we have a path to get that right extended, regardless of whether we partner on this regional treatment plan or not. I'll throw the caveat, or the thing is that Willamette River Wellfield is basically a summertime source of water. And when I talk about our need to maximize that water right, that's where we're going to need to have a full-blown treatment plant in order to use that water during the winter as well.
Yeah, having the right's one thing, but using the water is a whole different thing.
And how to use that right to its full extent so that you can certificate.
Yeah. And again, at some point, then we would need a surface treatment plant, just keep pulling water off the river and drinking it. So, okay. And then again, we would be duplicating because they're going forward.
Independence has demonstrated that they're moving forward, whether we're a partner or not.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Oberst?
I heard you say 40 to 60 million, but I think what you probably really said was 40 to 60 billion from the feds. Is that the total pot of money?
Oh, no, I was talking about the water treatment
Oh,
plant
okay.
cost, that it would be between 40 and 60
Oh, okay.
million. We don't
Got
know
it.
for sure. I honestly don't know what the total number is in the pot. For the 14 years where earmarks were not done, funding was still going into this account. And now earmarks came back, I think, 4 years ago. So the funds have been sitting there, and now they're trying to figure out how to use them, and that's why they've gone through this process. But I was told a $15 million project would be a rounding error if you look at how much money is in that fund.
Which leads to my second question, which was, I saw on your chart, Russ, 35 million for this plant, but that's just our part? That's the whole thing?
That was our
Okay. Okay. Just trying to clarify.
Correct.
And then finally, what's the sum total draw of Monmouth, Independence, and Dallas per day right now? How many, do you have any notion? Now, the reason I'm asking is your chart again says, and you said, this will handle Monmouth's water needs well into the future, unless we're already right on the edge of what this is going to be able to produce and so on. So just curious.
So I can't answer the first question about what everybody's combined usage is as far as our water right. On the in the attachments, I show kind of our planning horizon. That doesn't necessarily because we're going to apply the Willamette right to a portion of the Willamette right to the Willamette River well field. That reduces that amount, but that amount, there's still additional surplus in that water right beyond the planning window.
And this plan, when we built our plan, you mentioned part of the development of the well fields was in conjunction with Independence.
The Willamette River well field, yes,
Yeah.
correct.
Correct. So, and this has plans for that and it has costs, but that was only our cost. Or would those costs increase because Independence is abandoning that development?
Any costs moving forward, almost all costs moving forward with developing the Willamette well field are improvements that are specific to getting the water from the well field to our treatment property plant, forest treatment plan. So we would have bore those costs anyhow.
Okay.
Russ, I'm looking on page 84, and that, where you're talking about the 2020 Water Master Plan overview, and you talk about the demands in 2020, and then the demands in 2040. And if I'm reading it correctly, the maximum daily demand, or the gallons per minute, 2635 is what your estimate is. And you look below that, the water resources to meet 2040 demands, and you sort of index or identify the sources there, of which totals to, 2,980 gallons per minute, I guess. So that suggests to me that we've got an adequate supply planned for at the moment. Okay, good.
That's correct.
So that's good. In effect, we're sort of playing with house money then. If we've got ARPA funds that can be utilized to see whether we can get something better, to me, that makes good sense. To your point, we need to make sure that we've got on that an off ramp. I mean, we can get up to that and say, you spent $200,000 for the study, the three of you, and by the way, it's going to cost you $30 million each to build the thing out. We can say, we're covered for the moment, and we're looking for another alternative. So I guess I would be in favor of moving forward with the thing, and to see what we've got. And to your point, we all need to have a talking point sheets when we talk to, state people, we talk to federal people, what we know, so we know of which we speak. Instead of just saying like we usually do, hey, we need more money now. Transportation. Now water is the next deal. And water is the key to any kind of development. That's the key to any development. So we got to have plenty of that. I mean, look, Phoenix, Arizona, fortunately, they got a lot of water down there. And look at that development. Wouldn't recommend it, but they've done a good job of planning.
Okay, other questions? And again, all we're doing at this point is would be allowing the city manager to enter into those negotiations for the intergovernmental agreement. That's all we're looking at this time, and that would come back to us. Again, if you have any specific protections that you would like to see in the agreement, this might be a good time to mention them while Lane's here to make those notes. But obviously, we would have a chance to review it if something comes up between now and then. I do.
Madam Mayor, I would move to authorize the city manager to negotiate terms of an IGA in the best interest of the city of Monmouth.
Second.
Do we specify what the
As it relates to combined water rights and a.
I think you want to say
Different-
development
that's a
of a
different motion.
regional water treatment plant, yeah.
Negotiate terms of an IGA with Polk County and the City of Independence to complete feasibility
There we go.
study and the design of a regional water treatment plant.
I second.
there were a couple versions. Is there a second to that motion?
I seconded.
Thank you, Councillor Carey, for the motion and Councillor Belts for the second. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Right.
That sounds like a deal, so go forth and negotiate, and we appreciate that, Russ, very much. And this is a big deal that we have to deal with, and it's not fun to deal with stuff that's 30 years, 20, 30 years out, but if we don't do it now, it'll be a world of hurt. So thank you. beats not being able to flush your toilets or have any water to drink. Absolutely. Good luck to Dallas with their separate project. All right, that takes us to a work session report on Supreme Court ruling on camping. I think we asked for an evaluation of how the Supreme Court ruling in Grants Pass case will potentially affect us. Our legal counsel, Lane Shutter.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I can be pretty brief with this because the answer is that nothing will change in the short term for a couple of reasons. One, as you know, this issue goes back to the Martin versus Boise case. I think a 2020 case, I think it was, where the federal district court in Idaho held that it was a violation of the Eighth Amendment prohibition on cruel and unusual punishment to enforce anti-camping laws against homeless individuals, and basically crafted this methodology whereby city could only cite people for violation of these anti-camping laws on public property if there were adequate numbers of shelter beds available and they simply weren't being used. And if you didn't have enough shelter beds, then you couldn't be citing people for violation of anti-camping laws. That case was applied against the city of Grants Pass, and the Oregon District Court pretty much followed the holding of the Boise case. The Grants Pass case was appealed to the Ninth Circuit and affirmed by the Ninth Circuit. So this rule was the rule for the Ninth Circuit states, which really limited states' ability to enforce anti-camping laws because of this limitation of the federal constitution that was found by the Ninth Circuit. That was all reversed by the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said that the enforcement of generally applicable laws regulating camping on public property does not constitute cruel and unusual punishment. And it has this sense that, there's a big sea change here as a result of this. There's really not, for a couple of reasons. One, the U.S. Supreme Court case has remanded the case of the lower courts to really evaluate and determine what that means in the application to specific facts in the Grants Pass case. But more importantly, in 2021, Oregon House Bill 3115 essentially codified the holding of the Boise case in Oregon statute. And we still are under that. That bill provides that any city or county law that regulates acts of sitting, lying, sleeping, or keeping warm and dry outdoors on public property that is open to the public must be objectively reasonable as to time, place, and manner with regard to persons experiencing homelessness. And it further says that reasonableness shall be determined based on the totality of the circumstances, including but not limited to the impact of the law on persons experiencing homelessness. And if you unpack that, that essentially is the holding of the Boise case. You have to look at the circumstances, and if you don't have any shelter beds, then you've got an unreasonable impact on homeless people when you're citing them for violating these anti-camping laws because there's nowhere for them to go. And so that statute remains on the books, and that is Oregon law, will remain generally applicable to all Oregon cities unless the legislature modifies it, amends it. So we're still under that. So the chief is here, and he can talk about how Monmouth is enforcing, but I would say that Monmouth is already managing its homelessness population within the confines of our existing law. We do have hours for parks that are generally applicable. It's not that anti-camping, it's just that it's reasonable to close parks at certain hours. It's reasonable to make public buildings and property grounds off limits generally to people, not for the purpose of camping necessarily, but for public safety and for protection of property. And we're managing that. It's not easy. I'm sure the chief will tell you. But I think we will continue to do that and really have to continue to do that until we get either further clarification from the courts on the full parameters of the Grants Pass case, but more importantly, also from the legislature in what is now currently Oregon law. So bottom line is, it's an important case, an important decision. The impact of it is not immediately evident and probably won't have an impact, at least for the time being, in what we do.
Thank you, Lane. I would just add that, well, there's not a whole lot to add. It changed absolutely nothing for the PD. Our response is the same. We do get complaints at times of people camping in parks, primarily. We respond, but our officers, and really as Counselor McKeel had brought up earlier in a conversation, that our response is really trying to connect people to resources. We try to deal, if there's behaviors that are unruly or unlawful that are happening there, we will deal with those behaviors, but we're not dealing with really people being, homeless in the park. That's not what we're doing, but we are on many occasions connecting those people to resources and trying to see if they're ready for the next step and whatever they're needing in their lives, but we're not enforcing anti-camping. There are times that we will try to encourage people, especially if we know that there's other options that they may look at. We'll try to encourage that and say this probably isn't the best place for you to be, but we're not enforcing those things.
Okay. And, yep, Counselor Carey.
If this proposed shelter, or what we're hearing is the proposed shelter, comes online in Monmouth, will that help us or hurt us?
Oh, it'll help. I'm not going to say that it would solve the problem. If you're strictly counting homeless people and shelter space available, I don't know that it would be, under the Boise case, if you're doing that strict kind of numerical analysis, I don't know that you'll have enough space in a single shelter to accommodate every homeless person in the city of Monmouth. So I think you'll still have to do that kind of balancing, but it certainly helps because it will take some people off the street.
And is there, because if there are places where shelters and the person are approved to be there, so no vacancy at the end, basically. So that counts as none.
Yeah.
For us.
That's right.
Well, I don't want to get into.
Yeah, no, I think the bottom line is, though, it will help because there will be more shelter space. There will be people in those shelters who otherwise would probably be on the street. There will probably still be people on the street, even with that shelter. But you'll have fewer, so it helps.
And they're connected to services and hopefully moving on. So there you go. All right. Thank you, Chief, and thank you, Lane, for that update. That was something of interest, and I guess it's now back in the legislature's court to see, and I think we are aware there is interest in maybe looking at that and determining what changes might be made to Oregon law. So you'll want to be following our legislative updates from our League of Oregon Cities. So. And that brings us to a code amendment regarding EV stations for electric vehicles. Little spot in our codes. So our Power and Light Director, Wade Carey.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. This is somewhat of a simple amendment to our existing code. As you can see from the staff report, Oregon has set some really aggressive zero emission vehicle targets. And while a lot of studies show that most EVs are being charged in homes, there's a lot of demand for people who are traveling or visiting places to be able to use public charging stations. And as these number of vehicles get on the road, there's going to be a higher demand for pay stations, places where people can go and charge. Currently, our code does not allow someone to come in and install a commercially owned and operated charger and then resell the energy that the city supplies at a markup. And doesn't allow them to resell it at all. Doesn't specifically state markup or not. And so this amendment will allow for that. As you know, if Tesla wanted to come in and put a bank of 10 chargers, then Our code would allow that. Currently, that would not be allowed without a contract, which doing contracts for each of these would be an administrative burden that we really don't have much of an interest in taking on. And this same kind of adoption is being done with a lot of public utilities in the region because they all had the same type of clause in their policies that people couldn't resell the power to make money. And so we're seeing this more and more across the region.
And the electric charging stations in the Dairy Queen parking lot, we haven't had a problem because they don't charge for that. Is that why, or have we just not noticed that this is a contract?
I have not been able to find a contract with that. So currently, without this amendment, that station would be in violation of our code. So that predates me, but I've asked around and no one seems to know if a contract was done that allowed them to do that. But yes, they do sell the power at a markup.
And it's the state of Oregon running that station, I think, isn't it?
Not according
They
to-
installed them. I know that it was part of a state highway EV station program, but I don't know who do we charge for the power?
It is not the state of Oregon that is in our customer information system.
This is just for information. There will be a first reading of the actual amendment at the next meeting, unless there are other concerns or issues with this.
This is good.
Yeah, who would have thought someday that you'd have a reason to let people resell our power? All right, thanks for the information. We'll look for the amended ordinance.
All right. Thank you very much.
And that brings us to reports. I would like to just make a brief mayor's report this evening. I, first of all, want to say that even though this ended up being a little heavier agenda, I think it was well worth it. Those of us who attended National Night Out and had an opportunity to see community members interacting not only with our police officers, and there were a lot of them there, but also with Independence and particularly Polk Fire. I thought it was a great event and really, really glad that we could be there to share in that. Yeah. And so that was worth it. And I'm grateful that we were able to do that. I think a couple other things. I'm going to let Councilor Beltz report on the legislative event that happened this afternoon that I was not able to attend, but some good opportunities coming up to continue to engage with our federal and state legislators and delegations. And as we prepare for the next legislative session, I'm going to really encourage everyone to start becoming aware. What are the legislative things that are coming up? What do we need to be asking for? And along with that, when did we decide we're going to do our LOC ballot?
So Council President Kerry had asked for staff input, so we've gotten that together. So I'll be emailing that out to the council to then you can submit your top 5 and we'll bring it back to the next council meeting.
Yeah, great, because we do need to do that as well. So that will be all I have for this evening. And that takes us to reports of council representatives of boards and commissions. Anybody? I know a lot of boards and commissions are kind of taking summertime off, so.
That's true.
Councilor Bell?
Yes, so this afternoon, the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments held what I think it's the 3rd or 4th, what they're calling it, just a legislative session. And it's an intent to bring together local legislators, staff, congressional staff, as well as city staff and city councilors. It was very, very well attended. I would say 75 people. It was held at Chemeketa at their agricultural building. Never been in that building before. Beautiful, similar wood structure to this. Although we were reminded by Chemeketa president that it's hot in the summer and cold in the winter because of the way their building is. And so it was quite warm in there, but they have big roll-up doors. It was lovely. We discussed our regional priorities, which, surprise, surprise, include things like infrastructure investments, sewer, water, roads. We discussed that that is not, those are not exciting things, but they are the foundation for building communities. I discussed about tax reform, the ballot measures 5 and 50, and how they've tied the hands of local governments and what could be done about that. We talked about regional transportation projects, Highway 2251 project in Newburgh, Dundee, and similar projects, and how that not only helps the communities, but provides for the well-being and safety of the residents by making those corridors safer and helps prevent accidents. We talked about what was originally called the West Extension, which was the West Side Express service, if I remember correctly. Now we're simply talking in a broader scale of helping provide transportation connections between, obviously, Portland, Salem, Eugene, and the COG is definitely supporting, and there's a study going on right now to evaluate that. How can we provide better connectivity within the Willamette Valley in general? And then I thanked everyone for being there, reminded everybody, we have, the COG has those functions so that people can talk, so that people realize that priorities are established, and if everybody's not talking, then decisions are made that impact communities without the people that work for the communities having any input. And so we just wanted to make sure that people got to talk with their state legislatures and got to talk with one another. So, and then I had to rush off because I had to get here on time. So I think that's the summary. I don't need really to say anything about the senior board because Pat came and presented today. So you all know what the senior board is doing. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for representing us on the COG and being a part of those kinds of events. So, other boards and commissions? Library's off, tree board's off, planning didn't meet. All right. Oh, planning tomorrow?
I don't know.
No, they're all shaking their heads.
Yeah.
No planning tomorrow even. All right, that will bring us to a report from Rochelle Roden, our city manager.
Thank you. So last weekend, the library hosted a resource fair where youth 11 to 18 years of age had access to a clothing closet, preschool supplies, hygiene products, ability to get connected with ODHS and about benefits assistance, as well as haircuts and dental screenings. And over 250 people attended that event. Also, this week, there is a community art party planned on Thursday, the 22nd, from 3 to 6 p.m. to design and paint benches, paint river rocks, and create art in the alley space. So everyone is invited to participate, and light refreshments will be provided. The city council will be having a joint work session with the Independent City Council on August 29th at 6 p.m. at Polk County Fire. This is to discuss the transfer station that is being proposed up in Rickreall, in the place where the dairy is now. The city hall, so just to give you an update, so Swinnerton is currently, they came in this week and they're going room to room and they're working on all the final punch list items, and we're getting there. So hopefully, they haven't patched these holes yet, but they're working on them. So what else? Registration. Yeah. Registration for the LOC annual conference is open. That is October 17th through the 19th in Bend. So if you're interested in attending that, please register. And then one other thing to mention in regards to staffing in our finance department. Margarita is no longer with the city. She took a job with Western Oregon University. And so in that situation, Susie has decided not to fill that position. And with the savings of not hiring that position, our court clerk, who had been reduced to 0.80 hours due to the budget cuts in the general fund, we've backfilled those. So she's working in the finance department for 8 hours a week. So then she's now back to the 40 hours a week. So We're excited about that. And then also just to let you know that Susie is researching options on how to provide bilingual services in the front office going forward. So we're taking a look at that to make sure that we have that going forward. And with that, that's all I have.
Do you want to mention we've been working diligently on an appropriation we got through the state legislature for infrastructure to support affordable housing development on Riddle Road. And we had run into a small snag, but we're working through that if you want to mention.
Yeah, and so the DOJ took a look at that and they've come back and stated if your project didn't, you can only do exactly what the project title states. So if you did not include SDC charges for a project, then you can't use that funding on SDC charges. So they put together a form that we have to go through. Our Rep. Evans is where we're going to go through his office to ask for an amendment to the bill and to change the project name so that we'll include everything we need to be able to complete the Riddle Road project. So we have a meeting with him on September 3rd and we'll get that submitted and hopefully be able to move forward.
And apparently we are not the only ones because they actually they came up with a form so that people would be able, they just handed us a form and said, this is what the form is you need to have filled out. So, yeah, thank you. So we'll be asking Rep. Evans' office to carry that to the legislature. That brings us to council comments and announcements. And next week, we do have that special meeting, joint meeting with the Independent City Council at the Fire Hall. But before that, right on your way, don't forget to stop at MyNet that Thursday evening, the 29th, is the MyNet Customer Appreciation Luau. And that's always really fun. They have shaved ice, they have games, they have prizes, they have stuff for kids and adults. So.
And check out the work being done on the park too.
Yes. Yeah, you'll actually get to park in the new parking lot and yay, Russ! Russ is so excited. Woo! It looks awesome. You can actually walk on sidewalks to the MyNet and Public Works buildings. So, yep, that's right in the parking lot. And that's a great opportunity to hang out and meet community and celebrate our resource, MyNet. So, any other council comments or announcements?
I would just like to reiterate the Monmouth Recreational Park is absolutely, it just keeps looking better and better. You know, that park has been kind of a underserved, underutilized, underbeautified, lots of other things. And it's really we're starting to take advantage of the fact that we had this nice big chunk of land right in the middle of town and developing it fully. And Russ, thanks. Good job. It's looking good down there.
Madam Mayor, I would like to do the land acknowledgement.
Go ahead, Councilor McKeel.
Thank you. We would like to acknowledge that indigenous tribes and bands have been on the lands here and throughout Oregon since time immemorial. It is not lost on us that the Willamette Treaty forcibly removed these peoples from their homelands in 1855 to 1856, the year that the city of Monmouth was founded. We recognize the pre-existing and continued sovereignty of the federally recognized tribes that are a vibrant part of this region today, the Confederated Tribes of Grand Ronde Community and the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians, and thank them for sharing their perspective on how we might care for one another and the land so that it can take care of us. We commit to engaging in a respectful and successful partnership as stewards of these lands. Thank you.
Thank you. And proud to announce that a tribal leader, Angela Fasana, has been elected the chairperson of the Board of Trustees of Western Oregon University. We believe the first tribal member to lead one of the public university boards in the state. So looking forward to more robust work with the university and with the tribe because of that and opportunities to really engage. So, all right. And a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. Counselor Oberst, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Right.
Aye.